Gonzaga Nation SI on the Gonzaga Nation Media Network. We have a special guest, one of our journalists who did a phenomenal job in year one for Gonzaga Nation SI is back for year two. You've probably read his taglines, his headlines. We're going to preview the Kraziness in the Kennel, which, hard to believe, is this weekend. Cole Forsman, thanks for joining.
Great to be on today, Dan. I'm excited for another year, another crazy year of Gonzaga basketball. Craziness is right around the corner. The schedule was just released yesterday, so we're already back into it, and we haven't even tipped off yet.
Well, we're going to talk craziness in a minute, but you mentioned the schedule was just released. You and I had a chance to look at the schedule before it was publicly released. What are your thoughts when you look at that overall schedule? Because I think it's a gauntlet.
Yeah, I mean, it's comparable to last year, and it's maybe even tougher than last year. We've got potentially 6 top 25 teams. If everything holds according to preseason rankings, 4 of those could be in a 2-week span. Like it's a gauntlet, that non-conference schedule. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see. None of them are at home, unless you include Kentucky, which is at the arena, but none in the Kennel, which just adds on to that. It's going to be difficult for the Zags, but excited to see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to track this non-conference. I had a quick podcast the other day that we released just in regards to this may be, as you kind of alluded to, last year's schedule and this year's. This may be the toughest because there's no true home games against those elite programs. That's always been one of the mantras of Gonzaga's program. Play anybody, anywhere, anytime, and also with no excuses. There's no excuses in getting ready in the college basketball world these days. And one of the ways that you have to get ready is by recruiting top-level talent. And many times you host those top-level recruits and that talent on a weekend such as Kraziness in the Kennel. Give us your thoughts about Kraziness in the Kennel, both from a student perspective, a student journalist perspective, as well as then what you're looking forward to.
Yeah, from a student perspective, it's hype on campus. It falls on the same weekend as Fall Family Weekend at Gonzaga, so parents are here. A lot of people that don't get to see a lot of Gonzaga basketball during the season in person. So obviously there's a lot of hype. As a student, I know tickets just were available, so my friends are all scrambling to get them. And as a student journalist, I'm looking at the new guys. We don't have as many as we've had in the past. You think about Chet Holmgren last year, Jalen Suggs a couple years ago. Those top level recruits that come in and all eyes are on them. But this year it's the 2 new guys, Malachi Smith, Efton Reed, via the transfer. I'm really curious to see how they are integrated into the rest of the core, because it's only October. So, and that's something that I like to keep in mind as a journalist too, is sometimes the play might look a little sloppier than what we've accustomed to seeing from Gonzaga, but only a few practices in, they're still trying to integrate guys, trying to get back into the flow of things. So that's what I sort of look for, is where are we in terms of coming along as a whole unit. I'm looking at it, many individual performances, just how cohesive are we at this point, starting the season off at Kraziness.
So you mentioned the 2 players out of the transfer portal that were highly regarded, Efton Reed, Malachi Smith. There's a number of, I don't want to call them true veterans yet, because guys like Nolan Hickman, Hunter Salas, they had enough minutes to not call them to get comfortable, but they haven't been relied upon game in and game out. Are you most looking forward to, on Kraziness, seeing the comfort level of a Nolan Hickman, a Hunter Salas, or getting your eyes on Efton Reed or Malachi Smith for the first time?
Yeah, I think especially with Nolan, he's a potential candidate to start at the point guard position and do a lot of the ball handling stuff. So I'm very curious to see how he sort of controls the offense at times, and as well as Dominic Harris coming off the injury last season. where is he as far as his rehab goes? Is he going to be 100%? And yeah, Malachi Smith, Efton Reed, I'm curious to see how, what their roles are going to be. Both bring something, different than what is currently on the roster from last season. You got Malachi Smith, who could play the guard or the wing. I mean, he's 6'5", he's strong. He can penetrate. He, big physical body. So I'm curious to see how, where he plays in the lineup, as well as Efton Reed, what his defensive impact is going to be. But yeah, like you mentioned, there are players who we can't call they weren't relied upon, as you said. So it'll be interesting to see where they are now in terms of taking that next step, to see if they can take on more responsibility with the new guys that come in.
So you, as a journalist for Gonzaga Nation SI, you watch the games closely. You do a tremendous job writing articles pre and post game, as well as some in-depth pieces. I'm going to put you on the hot seat here, because usually when you write, you have a little bit more time to gather your thoughts, put them in line, and dot your I's, cross your T's. Really quickly, who's going to win the 3-point contest if they have one, because they've had one in the past? Who's the 3-point champ this year?
Rasir Bolton. It's hard not to. I mean, he was near the top. I think he was at the top of the WCC 3-point standing last year. So I expect him. I believe Nolan Hickman won it last year, but I'm going to go with Rasir Bolton this time around.
All right. How about slam dunk competition? I know I never competed in any of those when my career was in the midst of it. But who's your slam dunk champ this year at Kraziness in the Kennel?
It's hard not to pick Hunter Salas. I believe he won it last year. I think Dominic Harris could give him a good run for his money. I think both are going to throw down some insane dunks, though. It's going to be fun. Probably the most hyped dunk contest that we're going to have, if it happens.
All right. And you typically at Kraziness in the Kennel, there's a 12 to 15-minute scrimmage. They try to split the teams fairly evenly. I'm sure a lot of people will look into, hey, this is the starting group versus this. That's normally not the case. There's lots of guys that are still vying for rotational minutes, potential starting spots. But give me your quick pick on who you think the MVP will be.
MVP of the scrimmage. Wow. I think we've talked about it, or at least, ever since the draft combine, how great Julian Strother was there. We sort of see that. Sometimes, we'll see the veterans maybe, pull it back a little bit, maybe just try to get back into the flow, take it easy. But I think Julian Strother could, regardless.
Awesome. Well, our producer, Christian, making a comment about the T-shirt that I happen to wear for the recording of the podcast, Boise State basketball. For anybody out there, yes, I'm a fan, alum, booster, player, whatever you want to say, number one. But my connection to Boise State is strong because of Leon Rice and many other reasons why. But if you have another team, Cole, that you're pulling for outside of Gonzaga basketball this year, who would it be?
Man, another team outside of Gonzaga basketball. It's hard to think about. I'm from the other side of the state, so I rode with the Huskies a lot. I root for their, UW. I try to pull for them. It's going to be awkward. Well, maybe not so awkward, but when they come to town later in the season, it's, I would say UW basketball. They've had some great years. They've had some down years, but not a whole lot of Gonzaga connection, but probably the Huskies.
Well, that game will be televised regionally through Root Sports. I'll have the call as of now with Greg Heister and Richard Fox for that game. But most people don't realize this. I still cheer and pull for the Huskies as long as it's not against Gonzaga. So I'm right there with you. So I'm not going to say it. I'll just say go Zags. But appreciate you joining, and have fun at Kraziness in the Kennel. I know you got a lot of responsibilities in covering the event, but we'll catch you up with our recap next week shortly after.